All right. So we were just chatting before we started recording about the last time we did this. So first of all, thanks for coming on again, Fernanda. Last time we chatted was what, February 2020, March? What was it? It was December 20.
December 2020.
December 2020. Yeah, it was December 2020. And we were just talking about how like just the different spaces that we're in at the moment, and just talking about the aspect of well-being, and frankly speaking, I don't even know if we have processed it just as individuals of everything that we've kind of gone through in 2020, and that's kind of what we want to discuss today and share with the audience, because I feel it's so relevant. And I even stopped Fernanda just a minute ago and I said, let's just record this because it's just the topics we're talking about. So let's get back into it. So you were talking about, Fernanda, you were talking about how when how difficult it is to come out of a certain state when you're struggling within different aspects of like mental well-being, depression, etc. So let's continue that conversation.
Yeah, so like you said, we hadn't really, the last time we had a recording and had a chat, we were obviously in different places in our lives. And I mean, at that stage, we know the importance around, mental well-being and being able to speak about one's feelings and where they're at. And but still, we're afraid. I mean, I'm one of those people, like I was saying to you. Last year, I certainly felt that I was suffering with even if it's this low-grade depression, however you want to identify it, and kind of thought, I've got this, I'm leaning into the feelings. I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do. I eat well, try and sleep as best as I can, exercise, and I'm going to yoga the depression away, which obviously just doesn't work. And kind of got back from a walk in the morning and literally was shaking. I actually couldn't stop myself shaking and realized that there was a definite problem here, that I was going to need the help. So after speaking to my partner and to my mum, even in that moment, felt quite scared to tell them that this was a decision that I had taken, that I felt that I needed to seek out some medical professional help, which is exactly what I did. I went and saw a psychiatrist, which was scary for me to have to almost acknowledge that I couldn't fix what was going on, that this was a problem that was starting to escalate and become bigger than me and my capacity of coping. And it's exactly what I did. And it was an incredibly emotional first consult. I kind of arrived in there like most people, Dr. Google, had self-diagnosed myself. I knew exactly what was wrong with me. I had, if it wasn't the one, it was a different diagnosis. And fortunately, I was really lucky to have had a doctor who was unbelievably kind, because and I know for the most part doctors are, but I have also heard a lot of stories where they're not really too empathetic. They're kind of there, you're a number, they need to get you out the way and almost kind of throw tablets at you and say, take these once a day for however long, and you know what, life is going to be nice again. Whereas this guy was just amazing. He really just asked me what had happened in my life over the last 12 months. And I'd obviously for me, I'd had some major life events take place. My father had passed away, which was a huge disruptor in my life and my family's life. Interestingly, I started talking about that, and he could see I was grieving, but he realized it wasn't just that. That was very much a catalyst. And he actually forced me to go back and to really think about it. And as in our last conversation, all these things that happen in our lives do slowly but surely start chipping away at our resilience, and we kind of chip ourselves up and then kind of, have a bad moment. And so the cycle continues. But just the freedom to be able to tell my friends and my family, I'm not coping. This is what I've had to do. I know it's upsetting, or I know it's scary, but in being able to do that, it also allowed me to draw some boundaries. And that was the important thing. Boundaries with my friends, boundaries with my family members, that I'm here to help you where I can, but I'm not that person. I'm not going to be able to help you because I'm kind of struggling to keep my head above water right now. So it was it was liberating for me, in the sense that I kind of was able to say, right, I'm feeling very broken. I can't help. Everybody now needs to kind of help themselves where they can, because it's natural, particularly in very close-knit families like mine, Latin families where everybody knows everybody's business and everybody's there to help everyone. It was good to be able to sort of put that boundary in place, but also difficult because we were saying, culturally, particularly in your background, you being Russian, it doesn't allow you to speak about these things easily. Whereas us, there's you've got your health, this is ridiculous. You're not depressed. It's just a bad day. So when you said that, I completely understand. I mean, I just think of my grandmother, like that. There's not enough time to feel depressed. Just get on with it.
Just get on with it. No, in Russia, I mean, having grown up in this like environment where it's just the way it is. You're just having a bad day. Go have a drink, talk to a friend, moving on. Like, what do you mean? Like, it was just a different mentality. And we're very much against any of that sort of, medication and all of that, generally speaking, and which I'm still sort of against. I feel that there are natural ways, unless somebody actually has like a clinical problem, which obviously is a different story. But for many, many of us, I think that what does help is to have that sort of routine and really implementing these little habits and routines that help you, just as simple as getting endorphins going. And, I'm big on that, like but it's like continuously doing that. But also, to be fair, it's not always enough. Like there are times when you're like, like you said, you're doing the right things. And I mean, we're both from well-being perspective. So like, I mean, the company that we operate is around well-being. So, the to-do and everything. But I think the most powerful thing is being able to talk about it. I think this is where, we can do, we can go and we can exercise and we can eat healthy and all of that. And it's all adding to it. Absolutely. But I think being able to talk about it in a neutral space and just like just let it out is so powerful. And unfortunately, our societies don't always allow that. And I think that's because, and naturally for anybody who's listening, actually, if you have a person who's struggling right now and they just want to talk about it, just let them talk. Nobody's looking for advice, right? Like sometimes you just gotta
it's exactly that. And I think that was also something that I think as you said, to just be able to speak in a neutral space, and 100%, it's not that people are looking for advice. They are just looking for somebody to talk to, and for somebody to listen, and not necessarily to listen to reply. It's just hear them, because I had that experience where I wanted to do that. And I did a couple of times with certain friends and families and family members. And don't get me wrong, I love them. They're wonderful people, but I wasn't talking to them for their insights on it. It was just, I needed to talk, which also led to me stopping, where I think, oh, you know what? I just feel like having a quick chat and a vent. I don't really feel like sort of engaging in like a 1 or 2 hour, debate or discussion around it. I just wanted to sort of get something off my chest, which also leads to not talking, because it's, eventually you also don't want to feel that you're hassling people, or that, that you kind of this agony aunt character of everything's always so dramatic, or, so it puts you in, it kind of isolates you in your mind. I certainly felt very isolated and very alone. Yeah. Because I kind of felt, well, am I crazy? Like, okay, I might be crazy then, right? Because I'm not coping, and I'm taking everything so personally, and my social anxiety just went through the roof. So it kind of affected everything. Where eventually it was, I didn't want to, almost being alone, which is not the best thing, was the better alternative for me, until obviously tipping point, where I realized I needed to go and speak to someone.
And it's interesting because I feel like once you're like in this spiral, it's, and it's not easy to get out of it, to be honest. It's not easy. And I'm also wondering, like, what about people that just, can't afford to go, or the insurance doesn't cover? Most insurances, I think, don't cover therapy. Some, they do maybe to an extent, but I'm just curious, like, what about those people? What about those people that don't have access to that information, right? Or in particular countries, like, do you know of any resources that are available to people to like just talk to somebody?
There are resources. There are so many forums at the moment that you can find online. And the beauty about them is that they're completely anonymous. Okay. And around depression, and I know this is, a big to jump, I don't want to say everyone who feels depressed starts to feel suicidal or anything like that, but it is generally around those forums that support is offered. And I think it's important to note that if you do have any feeling where you start, where you're going to a dark place, you do need to look online for, I'm sure we could, just off the top of my head, I'm now gone blank, but you do get those forums that do offer the anonymous support. If not, a friend that you trust, it's always easier to speak to somebody, in my opinion, who is completely neutral, because then there's no judgment attached to it, because that is also the fear around coming out about your feelings, is that people are going to label you or judge you. But
it's also that, when you're talking to friends and family, they care, right? Like they really, they care. So they go into like savior mode, like they feel like they need to save you, they need to, and sometimes, and especially if you tend to have a very strong personality, and I think that people almost have never seen you in that space, so there's a shame associated with the fact that now like somebody like you needs help, and you're like, oh, so that makes you feel uncomfortable, and then they go into saving mode, and then being a person who's like, I don't need anybody saving, I'm the one saving everybody, then you're like, no, like I'm not doing that. So it's like a vicious circle of all these things that are like affecting that conversation. So when you go neutral, you can just you can just.
It's exactly that, and it's pretty much what happened with me as well. I am, I come from a Latin family and predominantly a matriarchal family, so we are a lot of ladies with a lot of opinions, and it's a lot going on. So our kind of modus operandi is you just survive, you keep going. If you feel down, you just pick yourself up and keep moving. There's no time to feel sad or depressed. It's kind of, depression is for the birds, really. And it was something that I had to do, because we do rely on each other, obviously, as family members, but particularly with me, I did feel that not that I had any problem with it, because it is my personality to want to help. That is my character. It's part of my core. It's why I am. We are in this field. It is about well-being and being able to help people. But I was the one in need of help, so I had to set some very clear boundaries, which was difficult. And I did kind of feel like, oh gosh, but if they look at me now and think, oh no, let's, she's just not coping with life now. Let's, because
just put her away for now.
My fear was almost that I was going to be pitied, which is not what I wanted.
Don't do that. Don't do that to other people, guys.
Don't pity people. Pity is not what is needed. It's support and understanding. That's really what it is.
Yeah, and what I think is important to highlight is that like there's a lot of talk about like why we should manage these sort of things, and I think that some people don't realize that all of that, I don't know, experience, feelings, emotions is going somewhere. And so if you're not releasing it, you better believe it is taking a back seat in the back of your mind somewhere in parts of your body. I'm a true believer that it impacts us physically more than we can ever imagine. I personally went through it. My body freaked out. Like when I was under a lot of stress, I wasn't talking to anybody. I just kept going. I was like, I'm just going to keep doing it. I kept executing for months and months until physically my body's like, well, that's enough. And then, well, you know what happened? I'm not going to go into detail, but a lot of things has happened to where like really my health suffered. And I was like, whoa. And that was when I was like, oh, something needs to give. Like literally my body was like, you're not doing this anymore. Like I'm just going to check out.
It's exactly that. Your body just checks out without notice. Like, I'm done. That's what happens.
I've never had that happen to me, that my body just checked out. Like I'm like a sporty person. I'm always like moving out there. I'm all about endorphins. I'm all about like, let's just keep this going, etc. And I think that just a message, if you take away anything from whoever's listening, is that no matter how strong and you got it together, no matter how positive you are, there's certain things in your life that are just going to put you on your ass, excuse my language. And it's just your body is going to freak out and just be like, we're going to it's going to force you to take a break, which then also impacts your mental well-being. So it's like a circle. And then
it's that vicious cycle. And I think for anybody who's listening and can, relate to what Elena and I are saying, if you're that person who's always trying to find things to keep busy because you don't really want to acknowledge your own issues, it's time to take stock of where you're at mental health wise, because that's pretty much what I was doing. I was like, oh no, I've got plenty to do. No. Let me find something to do. That's sort of avoidance behavior tactic of not wanting to actually cope with my own issues. So trying to fill it by other things. It's, as you said, it's going to be short-lived, and when it hits you hard. And I found with myself, once I kind of acknowledged and had gone and spoken to someone and was doing, now taking the steps necessary to just get me back onto a healthy base, it took, my body was exhausted. It's as if I had been hit by a truck. I felt kind of lame. Like, I'm a very energetic person by nature. I mean, I'm up, I have my routine and I love my routine. I was struggling to do the smallest of things. It took me a while. And it's as if my body, I'm so glad that I went and spoke to someone before my body actually did a complete shutdown, which is a breakdown. That is your body kind of saying, no, we're not going to do this. We need to reboot.
Yeah.
So
it goes somewhere. All of that goes somewhere. It really does. Like, really, like I didn't realize how much it really, like, it in theory until it happens to you, like, whoa, like, and it sneaks up on you. And you mentioned avoidance. And I think that's so important. I think that because that's what we keep doing. We just keep executing because we don't want to deal. Because the minute you stop, the minute you feel slight, like I have a little bit too much time on your hands, like all these things that you have to deal with surface, and you're like, no, not today. Let me work a little bit more, and you just keep pushing it and pushing it. And you're like, you know what? Let me meet this deadline, and then I'll have a breakdown. Let me just keep pushing it.
It's exactly it's exactly like that. And when you know, and I think anyone who's listening who's in it knows. But yeah, seriously, it's not worth it. It's not worth it, not only for you, for the people around you. It's not easy. It's not easy seeing someone struggle, who, for the most part, I often say this, family members and our partners, that's their role. They're not there to sort us out from a mental health point of view because they don't have the skill set to do that. Apart from listen, that's kind of the best that they can do. And I think it's also important for people to acknowledge that if that is, as an outlet, is not enough for you, then you possibly do need to think about going and seeking some medical advice.
Yeah.
Because I had to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I would speak, but it wasn't enough. Our family and friends don't have those answers unless they are themselves within the medical space and are, doctors.
Yeah.
It's okay to take it to a doctor.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you can't afford them, at least starting with the forums or some kind of community outreach or something like that. I'm sure there's something. And I think just also, like, for anybody who's listening, like, if you have a friend that's stressed out, just let them complain and bitch and just let it out. Like, like, I cannot tell you how therapeutic it is to just complain, like, just spend a day of like self-pity to somebody, like, there's nothing wrong with that. And I think we need to like stop making it seem like there's something wrong and like, oh, people are not grateful. Now you can be grateful and still complain about things that are happening in your life just to get it out. And that you don't really mean it, but you can be really grateful deep inside for everything, but you're still human and you still get tired. And it's not all about like this positive outlook. It's just more like, this is what I'm feeling, blah, 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 like, etc. And then you get back on it. Like, okay, back to regular operating mode,
Exactly. And just to sort of touch on that, positive self-talk, I'm a firm believer in it. And I think people do really need to give themselves a break and, acknowledge that you're not everything you do is a mess, but there's also a flip side to that. And I've seen this happen to people where you're blinding yourself with this positive self-talk, not acknowledging what's actually going on underneath. And that can be equally as toxic. So it's, as you say, it's completely normal to feel down. You know, we can't all, our frequency is not going to be up for 365 days of the year. If it is, there's a problem, because it's just not how we are built. But yeah, just have a bad day, feel it. Obviously, if those bad days turn into weeks, turn into months, you know, you need to kind of pay attention to that. But like you were saying, just have your rant, have your vent, say what you need to say, and then, you know, you'll feel better.
It doesn't make you any less positive later on if you just have that day. And I think that's so important. And because we, like, you know, and social media has a huge impact on it, right? Because we always, you know, tend to post like the good stuff and all of that. You know, and I've seen like some people coming out and like just showing like them having a crap day. And I think that's powerful, because like, I mean, social media has a lot to do with it, though. Like, you know what I mean? Like this whole, like, everything is dandy and everybody's like living there. It's not like that. So I think social media plays a big role, especially in recent years, and especially for the youth and really all of us. Like, it's not all dandy. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's like, yes, I mean, I don't know. And personally, in my case, like, I don't post a lot of the negative stuff because I just don't want to. I don't know if I want to contribute. I don't know. I just don't really put it out there because I don't really know. I don't feel people care about that. Do you know what I mean? So like, it's more of a one-to-one conversation. But, you know, but at the same time, I also acknowledge that it's not all positive and like happy and all the time. Do you know what I mean?
I completely know what you mean. I'm much of, so my school of thought, but particularly when it comes to my social media feeds, it's kind of the nice stuff. You know, I want to see nice stuff. I want to put out the nice stuff. The important thing is that, you know, there are filters on it. Trust me, like, we make it. This is also the danger of the whole social media cycle, is that it does tend to make people look at it and feel, oh, wow, it all looks so perfect. There is no such thing as perfect, but it is nice. It's nice to be able to share a good moment that you're in. But again, there are people that share the other side. I've got a friend of mine who struggles with terrible anxiety, and she actually went and posted a video of herself having an attack, like a proper full-on panic attack. And I mean, I've had an anxiety attack before, and it's terrifying. So I think, I felt that it was an excellent thing that she did, because the number of people that actually started talking about it was amazing. And they kind of were like, oh, well, I've also had that, not as bad, but I think I may have had the same. So you're kind of starting that dialogue, which is what really needs to happen. True.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is, like, anytime I, like, from my side, like with my one follower, but, you know, like from my side, every time I post something, if it's something even slightly like vulnerable, I always get responses from people. It's almost like people, like, when they feel that you understand what they're going through, like, you know what I mean? Like they feel vulnerable enough to be able to be like, oh, this person might understand me. You know, Definitely. So they kind of reach out, and it shows that it's much, and these people are strangers to me. So, and it shows that it's easier to talk to a stranger. And then I go and, you know, and I mean, I'm notorious for talking to strangers. Like, I mean, I'll talk to them at airport bars, at restaurants, like I go by myself everywhere. So like, I have no problem. And it's much easier to open up to a stranger. But then it brings me to my point that we were talking about earlier, is that it's hard to open up to people that know you. You know, and because you don't want to be vulnerable in front of them, and it's almost like there's still biases, you know. But
exactly. And you also you see yourself through their eyes, and you don't want to change that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you don't want to ruin this image that they have of you. Like, it's weird. But then, would it ruin it, or is it in your own head? Do you know what I mean? Like, is it like, right? Like,
exactly it. It's kind of, it is like, my experience was that it was very much in my own head. Like with my family, when I told them, like, oh no, and this, and, you know, kind of ran them through it, they were unbelievably supportive. And they were like, well, we're so glad that you have taken the steps to sort of make yourself well, because we were all really worried.
Yeah.
So us thinking that they don't notice, people do notice, but it's also something difficult. Like, what do you do? Like, hey, like, look, Elena, like, you need to go and do something.
Like, somebody tell me that, I'm going to be like,
go and help yourself. Yeah. So that's the point. I think it's also taking being accountable for your feelings, knowing yourself well enough to recognize that something is just off color. And the moment you feel that, to address it, don't let it become that elephant in the room that just grows and turns into this monster, because it's just so much more difficult to recover from that.
Yeah, sure.
So yeah, that would be kind of my advice to anyone.
Yeah. All right, let's give some practical tips. I feel like we've gotten, and let's just wrap it up on some practical tips. So I guess from my side, it's okay to feel like shit, feel like it, but then find like, give yourself some kind of timeline, like give yourself a couple of self-pity days, and it's okay, and just let it out, manage it however you need to manage it, you know, but then just, find a solution, you know, and that's what I always say, like, just find a solution that works for you. And the first try might not work. Like, I mean, and I was trying to do everything right. I was trying to do like, walking and like, exercising and all of that. Intense exercise works for me, which is why I'm always like, every day I have to move. But intense exercise really works for me, but I understand that not everybody else is into that workout. So find something where you just release. And it could be as simple as going smashing things. I mean, for God's sakes, it could be anything. You know what I mean? Like whatever it is, go whatever releases that sort of tension, because there is something to be said about endorphins, and it's natural chemicals. Once they start flowing, you literally just, everything, your perspective changes. And I think that's very powerful. It's not always enough, but it's a start. And then for me also, what helped is just just talking to somebody and knowing that I'm not crazy and this is normal, and it's okay to complain and just bitch about things, like just let it out in a safe space. So I would say like those two, like endorphins and just talking about it. That's what helps me.
So I couldn't agree with you more. And I mean, to add to those two things that I also do, it's also to kind of understand, if you're starting to feel stressed and you're starting to feel that anxiety, just take a moment. And I know it sounds corny, but breathing, people, it helps. Seriously, just take a breath, because to have your body and your mind kind of feeling stress at the same time is just not a good thing. So just take your deep breath, still your body so that your mind can just start thinking clearly. And I know for me, I mean, because I am quite, the whole Latin impulsive, and usually things that are stressful, you don't plan for, they tend to happen kind of in the moment. When that does happen, try and just put things into perspective, like quickly in your head, like, is this going to affect my life in the next month, 2, 3? If it's not, let it go. Seriously, let it go. Take a breath. You don't need to say anything. Just, put yourself in a quiet and a still mind, space, because the more if your mind is clear and still, your body will tend to sort of follow suit. So
I know it's these are simple tips, and I think we all understand it, and it's just about reminders. I mean, just to remind each other, like that. Sometimes it's simple, but at the end of the day, it really does work. Like the breathing, the kind of getting endorphins going, the talking to somebody. It's simple, but it works.
And boundaries. If you know of a situation, or if there are people that are adding to the stress of your life, there is nothing wrong in drawing that boundary. And if that person is going to feel upset about it, well, tough, because you need to look after yourself. You come first. Like, it has to be that way. If not, you're no good. How are you going to be productive, in the world if you're struggling to keep yourself productive and upbeat and, positive? You need to be functional and healthy, and it all starts, with mental health. So, anybody who's draining you of that energy, draw that boundary.
I call them energy vampires. I don't know where
exactly.
It's like energy vampires.
You know who you are.
You know who you are, and who those people are. Like these are the people, you leave an interaction with them, you're like, man, like they drained your energy, like energy vampires. Watch out for those. Right. I wonder who came up with that term. It wasn't me.
It's brilliant, but I've certainly started doing that. It's like, nope, not today. Sorry, not doing it.
Today is not the day. Anyway, but listen, always nice to chat with you. I think I'll of course, anybody who's listening, feel free to reach out to Fernanda or I about, I don't know, if you find any of this interesting or helpful, or you want to kind of just to
reach out for anything. It really, even if you guys are just looking for someone to have a chat to, it's,
a stranger.
You
don't know us. You can touch us. And I'll try to find some resources, some free resources for like It'll be interesting to see what's out there, like forums or something like that. You're gonna see and put some links for this podcast.
That'll be good, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks, Fer.
Thank you, and we'll speak to you soon.
Yes.